Thank you everyone for joining us today. And I have to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, because we have people from many different countries. In the list, we have some people joining us from the Pacific Coast, and it's 10 a.m. for them. And we have some others joining us from the Middle East, and it's 10 p.m. for them. And in the list of attendees, we have also some people from India and Russia that is midnight for them, and someone's even for Singapore is 2 a.m. for them. So I believe that they will wait for the recorded version of the training, because otherwise it's too late for them. So thank you everyone for joining. All the audience today are from our distribution partners worldwide. So you are our eyes in the market, you are our sales team, so you are really, really important for us. And I don't want to mention all the countries that are joining in the webinar today, but some of them. We have a good group of people from the US. We have also people from Peru, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, from South Africa, from Europe, from different countries, Italy, Germany, Austria, Spain, Belgium, the UK, Poland, Ukraine, Finland, Bulgaria, some others, and also from Turkey and more at the east, Israel, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, as I mentioned before, India, maybe Singapore, so a lot of different countries. Thank you, everyone. My name is Pedro Fernandez. Most of you or some of you know me. I'm the business director at Caliber Ophthalmics for EMEA, for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I'm introducing this SharePoint training webinar. We have started doing this kind of webinars, and we are planning to have a webinar per quarter during the year. This is the first one for 2021, and is, as you know, about the SharePoint microsurgical knives, and it's an internal training for our own team, for our distributors. In some cases, we will have also trainings inviting KOLs and inviting doctors from your country to join the webinars, same as the one that we did back in November last year for the SharePoint gut suture. So keep an eye open on our communication for the future, and just in case you are interested in the webinars that we are organizing, book yourself a slot or ask your doctors to join the webinar if you think that is interesting for them. From a logistics perspective, the webinar is planned for the next hour or so, maybe less than an hour. If you have any question, you can write them on the Q&A section. I will take note of the questions, and if they are not answered during the presentation, then I will ask them in a Q&A session at the end of the training. Just introduce you to our presenter today. Mark Williams is going to be the trainer in this session. Mark is the sales manager for the US at Caliber Ophthalmics, and he's also the trainer of our ophthalmic division. Mark has a huge experience in ophthalmology, having experience both with capital equipment and with disposable instruments. And he has worked for Bausch & Lomb, for Becton Dickinson, then for BBI, for Volk. And since 2019, he's with us, managing our direct operations team in the US and being also the person responsible for training. So I leave you in good hands. I'm sure that you will enjoy the training, and I hope that you learn something that you will be able to use in the market. So Mark, all yours.
Thank you, Pedro. Good morning, everyone. I hope we have a good session today. I'll be as brief as possible, and I'll speak as clearly as I possibly can. And I appreciate everyone's time. Today's session is going to really be in, let me see here. I've got this up, sorry. So today's session is really going to be about our knives, our sharp point knives. And first, to help us communicate better, we want to take a look at the words we use when discussing and describing our surgical knives. Next, we're going to review our sharp point knife product line in detail and discuss the features that make sharp point knives unique and stand out from those our competitors are selling. And in the final section, we'll share best practices for knife evaluations and how to set the table, properly set the table, I should say, for the surgeon to have a positive and successful knife evaluation. I thought I would begin our time today looking at the end goal we're all shooting for and the overarching reason why we're meeting together today. We know the differences in the efficacy of many surgical products today have narrowed significantly, and we can no longer bank on a surgeon choosing to switch from a competitor's product for clinical reasons alone. And the product you're selling and its superiority, is not the only key differentiator surgeons are seeking from us. And my hope is that throughout this discussion today, you will gain just a piece of information that you can use to add value for your surgeons and your customers. We have two manufacturing plants where sharp point knives are made. We have a manufacturing plant located in Tijuana, Mexico, that employs well over 1,000 workers. It's about over 175,000 square foot facility. I had the opportunity to visit a little over a year ago and can say that it was impressive, but I was most impressed by the workers we met that day and the pride they took in their workmanship. There's some really, really good people working for us there. Our second sharp point knife manufacturing plant is in the USA, is located in Pennsylvania. The newly renovated, this is a brand new facility, 23,000 square foot facility, has a clean room for precision manufacturing of medical devices. It has an engineering and design center, and it has advanced blade manufacturing capabilities. The site combines the two teams with decades of experience in designing and manufacturing ophthalmic knives and instruments. And our USA manufacturing plant is where the new Clear Control CC3D knife is produced. And we'll be talking more about the CC3D knife, so we have a little more information about that. Just to talk a little bit about our manufacturing process briefly, SharpPoint employs a unique manufacturing process which allows us to design and provide some of the sharpest blades for cataract surgery. Instead of grinding our blades, a round wire is first stamped into the shape of a knife, and then the knife is sharpened using a proprietary chemical bath used to remove metal from the edge of the knife. And this unique process allows for us to achieve consistent edges and consistent blade sharpness. So in this next section, we're going to really be reviewing I call it speaking the language of knives. I know that when I speak with my reps, my representatives in the field, if I'm talking about the ears of a knife, the bevel up, bevel down, how to describe a knife, these are important parts of the language. So to begin with, we often talk about a blade and we talk about a knife. And when you are going through our catalog and saying, well, how much is this blade? Or what's the cost, or what's the description for this knife? We need to be able to determine that there is a difference between the two. So essentially, it's really simple. A blade is just the blade itself. It does not include the handle. And when we're talking about a knife, we're really talking about the blade to include the handle. Throughout our discussion today, you'll notice on the slides that I've included pages from our catalog so that you can link familiarize yourself, number one, but also link the catalog to the discussion that we're having. So I hope that helps. It's something new that I've just started. Facets and bevels, what's the difference? Actually, a facet and the bevel, when we talk about them, they are interchangeable terms, okay? So if I'm talking about the facet of the blade or I'm talking about the bevel of the blade, we're usually talking about the same thing. And on this picture here, you can see the facet is in blue, and I'm outlining it here with my pointer. The edge of the knife is in red. And so at some point here, we're going to talk about bevel up, bevel down. And so this bevel right now, we're looking at the top of the knife. It is possible there's a bevel on the bottom. And if there is, then that's that. I'll get rid of any confusion there as we continue to move forward. When we talk about the cutting edge of the blade occurs at the intersection of the angle formed by a single bevel or double bevel knife. So where the bevels meet, you get the red line, which is the edge of the blade that we're looking at here. That's your cutting edge. When we talk about sharpness, it's usually, we're talking about what our surgeon's perception of sharpness, of the sharpness of our knife is. And there's two factors which affect that. Number one is the angle of the cutting edge and the friction that the doctor feels as they're advancing the blade. And so the angle of the cutting edge, they're first going to feel that at the tip when they're entering into the cornea. And then as they're advancing the knife, the friction of the blade is what they're going to be noticing secondarily. And both of those are going to affect their perception of the sharpness of our blades. Ears, pretty simple. Here at the corners of the blade, where the facet meet the edge, the handle, those are the ears of the blade. Okay, bevel up and bevel down. So simple enough. If there's a bevel on the top of the blade, but not on the bottom of the blade, as you can see here, this one has a bevel on the top or facet. It is a cutting surface and it's flat on the bottom. So that's a bevel up knife. If we're talking about a bevel down knife, it would be that the bevel is on the bottom of the knife, and the cutting surface is on the side, and the top of the knife is flat. Normally, you'll hear about bevel down knives when we're speaking about crescent knives. We do have knives that have parallel sides. There are clear corneal, they're called clear corneal knives with the parallel sides. And essentially what it is, it's just that the bevel has been extended along the side of the knife. And the so what of that is, once the doctor has made the incision, they've gone up to the edges here where your ears would normally be. If they continue to advance the knife, they have the ability to then use a sawing action to enlarge the incision either to the left or to the right. And here you can see the various sizes that this knife is available in. Indicator lines. Right now, only a few of our knives come with indicator lines. My understanding is that we're adding them to a larger group of our knives, and that process is underway as we speak. But for our discussion today, we're going to be referring to our double bevel knives as well as our trapezoid knives. Essentially, when we're talking about indicator lines, we're just talking about these small indicator lines. Some people call them graduation lines, depth marks. They have a lot of different, there's a lot of different ways to describe them, but these are the indicator lines that we're speaking about. We'll go into that a little more in detail. Okay, now we have single bevel and we have double bevel knives. and we have our trapezoid knives. So when we're talking about our single bevel knives, when you're looking down on the top of the bevel, on the top of the knife, you can see where these black lines are. In between them are the facet or the bevel, and the bottom of the blade is flat. There is no bevel on the bottom. So these are single bevel knives, bevel on the top, no bevel on the bottom. It is possible to have a single bevel where the bevel is on the bottom. So I would flip this picture over and the red line or the cutting edge would then be on the top. Here's a page from our catalog. You can see the various sizes that we have available. We have a lot of sizes from 2.2 all the way up to 4.5 in our single bevel. And I will say that this knife here mimics our competitors' knives. I was with BVI for quite a few years. This knife is very similar to the BVI knife. We're talking about double bevel. What you see now is you have the cutting edge in the middle and you have the facet or bevel on the top and on the bottom. So here's a picture from the top view, and the bottom view would be a mirror image. What's important is to see, what knives do we offer that come in a double bevel configuration. The first one I would point to here would be our Clear Control 3D Plus slit knives. These are the knives, remember, that are made in our USA PA plant, Pennsylvania plant. We'll be going into a little more detail on this knife later. It's available in a 0.6 all the way up to a 3.2. And it is the sharpest knife we make by 22%, I'm told. At least that's what the test came back as. And so I know that we've had a lot of success with this knife here in the US, and I hope that you will as well. We also have our slit knife double bevel. If you look at this picture of this slit knife, it looks very similar to this one. In the catalog, they're located one above the other, but this is our other double bevel knife. And then we have one other double bevel knife. This is a clear corneal knife with double bevel and has parallel sides. Again, don't get too caught up in, what is all of this right now. I just want to give you an overview of what we have. We'll go into the knives a little bit more during the presentation. I thought this is really important here, is to talk about our Clear Control knives. Our Clear Control knives, or let me go back here. This thing at the top is blocking me, sorry. Our Clear Control knives, also called the CCK knives, are double bevels, but they're different than our other double bevels. And this is where some confusion can set in. And hopefully I'm able to shed some light on, what is this blade? What's different about it? Why would I want to show this blade to my doctor instead of one of our other double bevel blades? So our CCK, or clear corneal knives, are different. They have a non-parallel facet. Remember, we talked about the facets on top, bottom, you have your cutting edge. Well, the CCKs have a non-parallel facet. And here's a picture, and actually the facets on the top and bottom are reversed and they're asymmetrical. So take a look over at the pictures here at the top. When you're looking down on the top of our CCK blade, remember it's double bevel. The bevel on the top looks like this, where the graduation begins at the side and at the ear and meets at a point at the tip. Now, if you look at the bottom of the blade, it's the opposite. You have it beginning at the ear and ending just proximal to the tip and then at the tip. So this is very unique. BVI doesn't have a blade like this. Alcon doesn't have a blade like this. this blade is unique to Sharp Point. And what's the point of this knife? Why do we make it is always the question. This knife here is really, it's designed for a multi-plane incision. So it's a double bevel. It cuts, because it's a double bevel, it cuts straight forward, meaning that as the knife is advancing, because it's a double bevel, there's as much force on the top of the knife as there is on the bottom. So the knife wants to move straight forward. If you're using a single bevel knife, the forces on the top of the knife and the bottom of the knife are different, because on the top of the knife, you have a cutting surface, and on the bottom of the knife, you do not. So with a double bevel knife that has an asymmetrical bottom and top, what it's designed to do is to allow the doctor to make a multi-plane incision. The other thing that it is it creates a square and straight incision. You'll notice that it's our only blade that has 3 different markings. You have one at 1.5, the middle one is 1.75 millimeter, and the one that's most proximal and distal to the tip is 2 millimeter. Again, when you're making a multi-plane incision, you have three planes that you're going to be working in, and these 3 different graduations allow the doctor to understand where they are in relation to the edge of the limbus or the entry into the cornea, and then it allows them to gauge their tunnel length. And we'll talk a little bit more about tunnel length as we get more into the presentation. And so over here, these indicator lines, the markings act as a visual guide to assist the surgeons in determining incision width and tunnel length. So the length of your tunnel, which is from the edge of the cornea to where they're entering the cornea, needs to be about 2 millimeters. And so this is what they're looking at here, is their length of their tunnel and then how wide it is. Surgeons may use the marks to determine when to change plane of the knife during the insertion. Again, that's the multi-plane. And here's something that's unique. If you've ever had a doctor comment that they thought our blade was a little bit longer than they're used to, what they're really referring to is the pitch of this roof. If you think of this as a house, the pitch of the roof and the angle of this roof. On our CCK knives, they tend to be that the angle is less acute, meaning that the knife seems shorter to the doctor. And so if you have a surgeon that's making multi-plane incisions and is looking for a shorter, I don't want to say stubbier, but just a less acute angle on their knife, the CCK is a great knife to present to them. They're available in 1.3 up to 4.9 millimeter, and they're also available in our guarded version. So this is our full line. Our full lineup is we have everything that you need in order to accomplish a cataract surgery, glaucoma, vitreoretinal, oculoplastic. We really have knives to fit the entire gamut of what your ophthalmic surgeon will be using. We have a full line of phaco or slit keratomes. The reason they're called phaco slit, if you're not sure, is because just think of it as these are the knives they're going to make the incision where the phaco tip is going to be going through. So that's why we call them, sometimes we call them phaco slits, sometimes we call them slit, sometimes we call them keratome. All of those terms are interchangeable. And they're just designed to make the incision for the phaco tip as well as the IOL inserter. If you're ever wondering, what size do I what size should I bring in for surgery? It comes down to a couple of things. Number one, just match what they're already using. That might be good enough, but not always, because sometimes our competitors measure the width of their knives just a little bit differently than we do. So a 2.3 in theirs might be a 2.4 in ours, 2.4 millimeter, or vice versa. So it really comes down to the diameter of their phaco tip and the diameter of the lens inserter, because those are the two of the largest diameter instruments that are going to be entering in through that incision they're going to be making. We have our clear corneal double bevel knives. We have our trapezoid knives, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then we have our secondary incision knives. So we have our side port knives. Sometimes you'll hear them called stab knives. I've never really called them stab knives in the past until I began working with SharpPoint, but I've gotten used to it now. These are really called side ports, stab knives. Another term you'll hear is paracentesis. When I'm speaking with a surgeon, I'll usually call it the side port, I'll say it, your slide port paracentesis incision, because they know exactly what I'm talking about at that point. Also, we have our crescent blades, which is more of a round blade where the edge goes all the way around. And we have these in bevel up and bevel down. And then we have a full complement of specialty blades as well. So our phaco slits, just to be on them briefly again, our phaco slits come in single bevel, double bevel. They're used for the main incision. They're used for the where the phaco goes, the phaco handpiece goes in, the IOL injector, and different sizes are available depending on the size of the phaco handpiece. But it's used for the main incision. Now this looks, there's a lot on this page, and I'll unpack it for you. I'll make it pretty easy. What we're really talking about on this page, if we're going to be talking about knives, if we're going to add value to our and bring value to the surgeon and to the surgery, we really should understand about wound architecture. So this says main incision architecture. It can also be called wound architecture. And beginning from left to right, the first thing that your doctor is thinking about is the placement of the phaco incision. You know, where am I going to begin? And the rule is really, it's going to be where the iris meets or cornea meets where the iris is. It meets the white of the eye. And that's called the limbus. The reason they want to make their incision there and not on the complete clear corneal is because where the limbus is, you have some vasculature. So there's going to be a little bit of bleeding, which means that there's going to be healing. The cornea itself is avascular. And so if you make an incision into the cornea, it's going to be there for a long time, because it's not going to have the bleeding in order for it to heal. So they want to be close to the limbus. Secondary that the doctor is thinking about is, what is the symmetry of my incision? And this is really, really the important part here. Looking at good form versus poor form. On the good form, that means that there's an equal amount of cornea. This black line is the incision going from the limbus to the inside of the cornea. And so you want to have an equal amount of cornea on the top of the incision as on the bottom of the incision. If your incision looks more like this, the bottom, where you have a shallow roof and a thicker floor, you know, what's going to happen is you're more likely to have a leakage, and your incision just won't have the integrity that it needs. The other thing that the doctor is thinking about is the dimension of their incision. You know, look at B down here. So B, poor form. What's happening here is that the width of the incision is much longer than the depth or the length. On the last one, your width is shorter than the length, but in the middle here, your width and your length, the difference here is that this length should be about 2 millimeters. So if you come down here to the picture on the bottom, you can see a little better here. This is your incision that's being made. And this portion of it here with the W is your width. And where the L is, this is your length. Over here on the left, it gives you a chart which talks about this little line that's on our knives in relation to the tip. What we're looking for is for this line to be about 2 millimeters from the tip. That allows them to bring the knife in, have the line lined up with the incision here. The tip of the blade will be right here, which should be 2 millimeters, this length. And then when they make their tunnel, they want it to be square, and they need it to be the right length and the right width. And if they accomplish that, then that's when your doctor is super happy and they look up at you and they say, hey, this is a great knife. This is just a really short video, which should begin playing. I guess it's not going to play. I'll have a link when you receive this presentation. You'll have a link in it, but the video essentially shows the knife going in, and it shows the graduation line meeting, and it really gives a good picture of this of a square incision. I'm sorry that this is not working. We'll continue forward here. So another blade that we have is called a trapezoid knife. Trapezoid knife is really a nice knife. It's found its place in the market with some doctors, but it just has not become the most popular knife that we have. But that said, it definitely has a place in the market. There's a lot of surgeons that use it and like it. And essentially what you have here is you have a very interesting architecture for this knife, one where you have two lines. And so when you're looking at the knife in the catalog, it's going to have two different numbers. Like it'll say 1.2 to 2.5 or 2.2 to 2.7. When you see those numbers in the catalog, they're referring to the first number will be this first line, and the second number will be the second line. On here, they call it an implant line. When they're calling an implant line, essentially what they're talking about there is that this doctor is going to make a smaller incision while they're performing their phaco, and then they're going to take the same knife and go back in and enlarge the incision to insert their lens. So the implant is the lens. So the first one, let's say they want to do a 1.2 phaco because they have they're using bimanual phaco, and their bimanual phaco is 2.2 millimeters, and sometimes they have them that are 1.6 or 1.8, really small ones. So they want to use as small a phaco handpieces as they possibly can, because the smaller the incision is in the cornea, the better the chamber stability is, the better the fluidics are, the calmer, the less turbulent it is inside of the eye. And if they can achieve that, that's gold for them. And then once they're ready to put their implant in, then they can go ahead and use the same knife and enlarge it to exactly the size that they want it to be in order to put in their IOL lens. So this really is a nice knife for doctors that have that technique. And now we move to our side port knives, also called stab knives. These are used to create the paracentesis. And we have this first blade that you'll see up here is our 15-degree blade. We also have restricted depth blades. So when you see that in the catalog, restricted depth, what that is you can see here that only on this particular one, 3 millimeters of the tip of the blade is showing. And so when doctors use the full blade, you know, they pretty much can put the full length of this blade in, or they can just put it to wherever they want to end up along this blade. But it's all by feel. So they're probably not getting, every patient is probably not getting exactly the same size incision. But if you use a restricted depth knife and they put it into to where this hub is, then they know they're going to get pretty much the same size incision every single time, or at least close to it. The thing about the 15-degree blades is that the blade or the bevel is only on one side of the blade. The top of the blade is flat. So there's only one cutting surface here as they're cutting. So they have to adjust for that. And here you can see it being used in surgery. A knife that we've been moving some of our 15-degree doctors to, and they've been really happy with. You know, if you're looking for a doctor, you're looking for something to differentiate yourself from your competitor, is our 1.1 side port. We call them clear port paracentesis knives. Sometimes you'll hear the word angled MVR. It's because this looks like an MVR blade, which is a vitreoretinal blade. That's just been angled. And in truth and in reality, that's exactly what's happened here. Doctors started to use that knife as a paracentesis knife. And then someone said, well, how about if we bend it? And that'll make it easier to use under the microscope. But the nice thing about these knives is that they make a tunnel width the same every single time, unlike a 15-degree blade, which you do have a little bit of variability here. You can have a little bit of a variability. This knife here will make we have it in 20 gauge, we have it in 23 gauge. I think we have a larger one in 19 gauge, but our smallest is 23 gauge, which is about, I think, 0.8 millimeter. So these are nice. These are side ports. In the crescent, we have our 2.0 crescent knife. A crescent knife comes in bevel up and bevel down. Typically, the crescent knife will be used for glaucoma procedures and sometimes for doctors who are performing their cataract procedure through the conjunctiva. Below that, you can see we have our mini crescents, which is an angled mini crescent. It's 1.25, so it's much smaller. But we have doctors who are using this for glaucoma procedures as well as dental procedures, which you'll see in a moment. And then we have some specialty knives, such as our spoon knife, which has a cutting edge all the way around 360 degrees. Here's that same, a very similar tip to our angled MVR, but this is just a straight. These are our vitrectomy knives. They come in 19, 20, 23, and 25 gauge. Today, many doctors are using 25 gauge, and they have trocars, which make the incision, and they're not using this knife for those. But you will see them used in any 20 gauge and sometimes 23 gauge case that you have for vitrectomy. We have a line of specialty knives. You may hear these referred to as beaver blades. We have them, BVI has them, Alcon has them. We have a nice complement and line of them. And I know that we are working on and soon to be released, we're going to have a full line of these specialty knives to really fill out the line. Right now we have a scleral blade. You'll hear, if anyone ever says, do you have the hockey stick blade? That's this one right here. Okay. Precision depth knives. If you have, so surgeons will, in order to address astigmatism, doctors will perform what's called an LRI or limbal relaxing incision. And as you see in the picture up here where the green lines are, those are created by this computer program that is measuring the cornea and how the cornea is shaped. So essentially an astigmatism is an irregular shape of the cornea. A lot of times they say it's either with the rule or against the rule. And so this doctor here, the computer program is determined that if he makes an incision where these green lines are, that the cornea will then lie down flat and be shaped more like a dome instead of like maybe like a football shape on the top, American football shape, sorry. So we have what are called precision depth knives. The cutting edge is really only this little beak on the tip. This portion over here is not the cutting edge. That is part of the handle, but this little beak, and they're only going to go in a very small, minute amount. It'll be either 300 micron, 350, 550, or 600 micron. The two most popular you'll see, well, the most popular will be the 550 micron depth. Second will be the 600 micron. And then the 350s and 300s after that. And I think it's going to depend if they think they have a really a thin cornea, or maybe one they don't think needs as much depth in the incision. So looking at our mini crescent is really a special blade, and it's one that has is being used by different surgeons, some in ophthalmology, many of them, but some not in ophthalmology. This one here is in ophthalmology. It's a trabeculectomy, and the mini crescent is used to create the flap. And I've included a link here that you can click on, and it'll take you to a video showing how that doctor uses the mini crescent to create the flap. It's something that you can pass on to your surgeons as well. The mini crescent is also used in periodontal surgery. Here's an article that I've included, and there's a link to the article showing, this is a picture of our mini crescent that's in the article. They talk about our knife as being part of periodontal microsurgery. So that is our 74-69-10, and it's a 1.25 angled, and it is a double beveled knife. It's unique. Again, this is unique. We're talking about adding value. Nobody else has this knife. This is just showing our crescent blade again. We have it in our blade tip as well as the full handle. We have it in our lamellar blade, and it's used for trabeculectomy for creating this flap here. I've included a link to a video so that you can watch the video and see our blade being used. And now we come to our Clear Corneal 3D Plus knife. This is the knife that's made in our Pennsylvania plant. Remember we talked about a doctor's perception of sharpness? And when they make that initial purchase into the cornea, we've measured it, and our knife, we say requires 30% less force to penetrate the cornea tissue than our competitors. It's 22% thinner than our own standard slit knives. By being thinner, it gives us more control. Remember, they want it, when they make that cut into the cornea, they want the same amount of tissue on the top as corneal tissue on the top is on the bottom. And by having a sharp blade, it allows them to control the blade and get a really nice, even incision. We have, again, we have our proprietary Infinite Edge technology included with this knife. Infinite Edge is a trademark of ours. It's something that I use. I think it's something that if you use that when you talk to your customers, your doctors, incorporate the word Infinite Edge, it sets us apart. It's something that's different about our knife. It's something that your customers might even ask you about. Here's a 100 times magnification of the tip of this knife. You can see it looks like a stealth bomber at the tip, and this tip is it's so thin that this tip here, if this portion here where it's raised was not there, this tip would have the ability to bend on its own. So it's a well-designed knife. Here's just a chart. This is also in your literature, something that you can give your customers. You can show that you have our CC3D Plus. It takes less than 20 grams to penetrate when you're pushing it into the cornea. The next line up here is our standard knife. That's our knife that we're comparing our CC3D to. We're comparing it to our slit knives. And then you have a blue line and then a gray line. The blue line has a B, the gray line has an A. A stands for Alcon, B stands for BVI, in case you're wondering. So that's available for you. We show it. So the reason that there are 3 different ones is because we have one with a 2.2 millimeter, one with a 2.4, and one with a 2.75 knife. This is just, again, mentioning, the factors that are influencing the perception of sharpness, how thick the blade is, what's the mass of it, the cutting angle, the geometry, and surface enhancement. We do put a surface enhancement on all of our knives. One other thing that's unique about this knife is that it creates a 3-dimensional micro bevel incision. You can see this is just a drawing of it. It's not obviously what it's going to look like, but we're trying to come close to show here because of the tip. This is a double bevel knife. So imagine this is on the bottom of the knife as well. Here it is from the side. So when you do create your incision, you're creating a small roof here in the middle. And this is where, you're passing your phaco tip through as well as your inserter. So what we say is it gives you just a little bit more room, a little bit more flexibility to the wound in order to accommodate your phaco handpiece as well as your lens inserter. And what should they notice? What should your doctor notice when you're on an evaluation? Number 1, less force is needed to penetrate the cornea. 2, it's a thinner blade, so they have a more control over their incision. And then the micro bevel at the tip, we're not sure if they're going to appreciate this or not unless we point it out. In fact, I know they're not going to, because it's just, so it provides less stress on the wound during phaco and lens insertion. And you know how it is. If you don't point something out to somebody, they're probably not going to notice it. But if you do point it out, they're going to. So just remember, those are the 3 things that they should be noticing. This is the sell sheet for the clear control knife. Here you have your 3 different representations of penetration strength, as well as your catalog ordering numbers. We are adding a line to this knife, which would be a 2 millimeter line as well. So we also have guarded knives, safety knives. These are very popular here. BVI has marketed them to death for the last 15 years. And there are a lot of accounts that are using guarded knives. And the reason they use them is because for two reasons. Number one is they're able to say that they're providing something that has safety value for their nurses and for their technicians. The other one is that it makes the knife safer when it's being passed back and forth between the doctor and the scrub tech. Our safety knives are available in a slit, side port, slit double bevel, clear corneal double bevel, and our crescent. So they're also available in crescent. They're available in the 1.1 angled MVR. Remember we were just talking about that. Here's another picture of it, just showing the tip of the blade. This is our safety handle. There is a slider here which locks in the forward and back position. You push forward on the plunger to extend the blade, and then pull back to retract the blade back into the handle. And it's available in a number of sizes. We have it in our 15 degree. And you'll notice here it says 15 degree on the stab. It also says 22.5, 30 degree, and 45. And you will find doctors who want to have a little wider incision. And so they'll move to these varying degrees. We have it in our crescent. We have it in the mini crescent, our 1.1 angled paracentesis, our clear corneal double bevel knives, as well as our slit knives. Excuse me. So we're coming to the end of our presentation. There were a couple of questions that were brought out, and I know we went out to everybody and asked everyone to send in questions. We didn't get as many as we would like, but we got a few of them, and I've tried to touch upon some of those questions during our presentation. But here was one regarding the veterinary surgery field and about knives being used for veterinary usage. And what I've sold knives to veterinarians before, and in researching it, what I found is that there's really nothing different that they do in an animal's eye than they would do in a human eye. So they're going to use the same instruments. They're going to use the same knives. They're going to use a slit knife, a paracentesis knife. As you can see here, they've got a phaco tip in. They've got the instrument. And if I didn't tell you this was an animal, you might not know the difference. And so I think when it comes to veterinary doctors who are veterinary surgeons, I think that we just need to bring in our entire catalog and show them what we have and what's available for them. So this is something I wanted to show everyone. I am tickled pink. I'm excited about it. And I think it's really going to be nice. But right now, I have no way to give a drum roll, but if I were, I would give it at this point. And so right now, this is the current state of our brand new guarded safety line. It has not been released yet. In fact, you might not see it for the next 30 days, but we're hard at work trying to get everything together. And it essentially, what we've done is we've changed. Of course, it's see-through, so you can see. We are going to have different color plungers so that the tech, when they're looking down at the table, can tell, is this a keratome slit knife? Is this a side port? Is this a crescent blade? They'll have different colors. And so by being color coded, I think we're kind of coming up to and matching what some others have done in the marketplace. And I think we're really serving our customers well by addressing concerns and ideas that they've given us in the past. The other thing is that you can clearly see the tip of this blade, and there's a small, unobtrusive bubble here at the end, or covering over the tip of this blade. What's really nice about the design of this covering here is that it's going to accommodate a wider breadth of our line. In other words, we can put larger, different types of knives inside of a handle like this that we weren't able to before. And so I'm real excited about this. And to end our time together today, I just wanted to go through really quickly the things that I look at for setting the table for a successful knife, sharp point knife evaluation. I've done quite a few evaluations over the many years, and have been in there, biting my nails, trying to make sure that everything was there and in place to have a successful evaluation. So the first thing that I found that helps to start up and to have a successful evaluation is to set the table, to set it properly. And that is to kind of begin to think like your doctor. What's in their mind, what's going through their head. I think all of us have seen this picture before. We're standing there, 7 o'clock in the morning. We just drove through the snow, through the rain, got up at 4:30 in the morning. We're standing there with our doctor, and we're going to be showing them our knives. So what are they thinking? Essentially, it's pretty simple. So, what have you brought for me to use today? So we want to explain to them, what is it that we're bringing in? They want to know, this doctor wants to know, what adjustments will I need to make? If he's been using a single bevel knife, and now you're bringing him a double bevel, clear control 3D, there's a possibility that there's an adjustment. If we're bringing him a knife that's 22 to 30% sharper than the knife he's been using, that's going to be an adjustment for this doctor, because if the doctor goes in and if a knife they're used to how long it takes their knife to drag through to make the size and the length tunnel that they're used to making. If you give them a much sharper knife, there's a possibility, if you don't let them know ahead of time, that they might make a really short tunnel the first time through. Even if you tell them, and this happened to me, even telling the doctor, they still made a short tunnel that first time through. The great thing is, because I set the table and told them ahead of time, they said to me, "Hey, Mark, I made a short tunnel on that one, just like you mentioned. I didn't realize how sharp this was going to be. I'll watch it. Let's give it a couple more tries." But if I had not set the table and they had a short tunnel, you better believe they probably would have been blaming it on the knife. It might not even have carried on throughout the day. So it's important to set the table on that. They want to know, how's it going to benefit them? How will it benefit me as a surgeon? And then how will it benefit my patient outcomes? And are you going to increase our cost? Of course, is a big one. A lot of times these doctors are part owners in the centers here, and so they're very cost conscious. So our message is simple. Our message, and we have to keep it simple. Sharp point knives are known for their sharpness, and sharpness means that you have more control over your incisions. They're designed for consistency, and consistency provides fewer surprises. That's a big one. They'll understand what that is. Allowing for predictable and repeatable care for each patient. So now we've addressed what's in it for them. We've addressed what's in it for their patient. And the third one, the third leg is our goal is to help your center contain costs and perhaps even save money. So to me, those are the three legs of the stool. What's in it for the doctor? What's in it for the patient? What's in it for the center? And if we address those three things as we're standing here with the doctor or throughout the day, then I think we in some way have addressed that question. And then by understanding our product, we're able to add value. So just some really quick pearls. I put them on here. You can read them. But a couple of them are never settle for one case. Things can go wrong. Bring the next size up. If they're using a 2.4 Alcon, bring our 2.4, but also bring our 2.5. Set the proper expectations prior to each case. You can't meet the surgeon. If you can't meet the surgeon prior to the OR, let them handle the product prior to the case. Somehow put it in their hands. Let them know how the product will be different. Post-case follow-up, focus on the positives and deflect the negatives. As you're coming out of the case, so doctor, how did everything go for you? Did you find our product to be clinically acceptable? Do I have your support? All of those closing questions that we normally ask. Always be a resource in the room. Be the fifth staff member. If somebody needs a door held for them, they're bringing the patient in, whatever we can do to be an asset to that team, to the staff member. Remember, the OR staff matter. Many times they have the ear of the doctor after we leave, and they can not take our product off the shelf if they want to, and the doctor might not always know the difference. So OR staff is important and they matter. And then lastly, include everyone. Create a buzz around the techs. When you get there, tell them what's different about your knife. Tell them what's special about it. Talk about Sharp Point. Talk about our knives and the fact that and why we're there and what's different about our knives. They will often mention your products to the doctors when you're not around. Lastly, this is my last slide, I promise, is evidence and proof. I think we all know, maybe have been there. A week has passed after the evaluation. The nurse calls the doctor and says, "Hey doctor, so we're thinking about those Sharp Point knives. What did you think about them?" And if you don't have a written piece of evidence that the doctor has checked off boxes and signed their name to, you're really missing it. You don't have the full picture, and you're relying on your customer to call their doctor to figure out if they liked your knife or not. So by using an evaluation sheet, we have these, they can be customized. You can customize them how you want for your doctors. But for a doctor to rate your knife as clinically acceptable, perceived sharpness, it's very simple. Sign it, and then you have evidence. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for your time and for your patience. I hope everyone took something from our time together. It certainly won't be the last time we meet, I know. And I'll hand it back over to Pedro to finish up our conversation, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. I hope, as you say, that people have enjoyed it and have got some good information for them, useful information for them. We have a few questions that I would like to go through them.
Absolutely.
I to ask you to answer to them as quickly as possible, because we have a few of them. So
Okay.
let me start with the first one. What is the level of tolerance on the knives? Is that a standard tolerance or individual to each size knife?
Well, when you say tolerance, I'm not sure what is meant by the word tolerance.
I understand that is then if you say, for example, that a slim knife is 2.5, what does it mean? Is from 2.4 to 2.6 is exactly 2.5 is the same for everybody?
So when we're looking at, so if I bring up a blade here and I'm talking about from this ear to this ear, if they go all the way in, and this is a 2.4 knife, then the width of the incision should be 2.4. But when we're talking about tolerance levels, any manufacturer and engineer would say within a plus or minus, 0.2 millimeter or 0.1, could be 0.002. It's probably a very small amount. If you're talking about how the tolerance between our knives and our competitors' knives, there's definitely a difference. A 2.4 in an Alcon knife might not be a 2.4 with ours. A 2.4 with theirs may be a 2. Like with when I was selling BVI, a 2.4 Alcon knife was the same as a 2.5 BVI knife. And now that was not me taking a tape measure and measuring the two knives. That was surgeon impression. And so the doctor can tell the difference because of the amount of fluid leaking out, by how tight the phaco tip is when they put it in. And so that's why I say manage that by bringing the next size up whenever you go into a case. Don't go into a 2.4 case with a 2.4 only. Bring your 2.5 as well. I don't know if that answers the question or not, Pedro, but
I hope so.
yeah.
What is sharper, a double bevel or a single bevel knife?
Good question. They both have the same sharpness. It's just that the drag is going to be different. So the initial purchase of us of this double bevel, single bevel should be the same. But since there's more metal on the bottom, remember you have the bevel on the top and the bottom with the double bevel. A doctor will sometimes notice more drag with the double bevel, but that's okay. What they want is they want the double bevel cuts straight forward. The single bevel kind of goes up a little bit as they're cutting, so they have to make adjustments. But again, we're talking about perception, right? I can be in with 3 doctors and they will swear that my double bevel is the sharpest knife they've ever used. And then I can go in with the 4th doctor and they'll say that it's dull compared to their single bevel knife. And so here's why I say that and why I go there. It's because it's all about setting the table and setting the perception of the doctor. So doctor, you're used to using a single bevel knife. I've brought you in a clear cornel knife that has a very unique edge. Because it's a double bevel, you may feel a little bit more drag once you've made the purchase. But the good thing about this blade is that it cuts straight forward, and it's going to allow you to make your multi-plane incision very nicely using the graduation lines we have on it. You know.
Another question somebody asked is, what may cause slit knives blunt, or make the surgeon feel it is blunt?
It is blunt. Well, so you'll have one doctor say it's blunt and another one say that it's not, that it's sharp. So you have to go, well, why is that the case? And it has to do with their technique, okay, and what they're used to. If they're used to using a single bevel slit, and they have a particular technique for how they enter the cornea initially, they're going to have to make they may have to make some adjustments with our knife versus the one they've been using. And then there are some knives out there, you know, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, we have competitors that have some very, very sharp knives. And you remember I said at the beginning, the difference between our products is being blurred because everyone has really good technology now. And so, you know, if I get a doctor that says I have a blunt tip on my knife, what I will do is I'll talk about, you know, talk about their technique, have them kind of explain it to me. If I have them draw it on a piece of paper, I've even had them. And then I ask them to give me a couple more cases and let's take a look at it. And the great thing about SharpPoint is that you have options. We don't just have one single bevel, one double bevel. You know, we have more options that you can offer that doctor to see if maybe one of our other knives they would like better. Other than that, I'm not sure what else you would do.
Mark, another question regarding the stab knives. Could you explain again the difference in between the different stab knives, the differences on the degrees of the knives?
The degree.
The 15 degrees, the 22.5, the 30 degrees, and the 45.
Oh, on the stab knives?
Stabs, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking for my stab knives on here. So on this, am I still sharing?
Yep.
Okay. So on this 15 degree here, you can see that there's an angle created here. So this is a 15 degree. If you go to a 22.5, this angle will be less acute, meaning that your edge will be, this will be wider here at the tip, this portion here. So you'll have a less acute angle, and then you go to 35, and then you go to 45. And what it is you can imagine that the wider the tip is, the wider your incision is going to be, right? And so, you know, it's really, for cataract surgery, I've had doctors, here's what I've seen in surgery is that you'll have a doctor I'll give my doctor this 15 degree and they'll look at it and they'll go, oh my gosh, this thing is really long. It's like a sickle. I don't feel safe with this. And so I said, I'll tell you what, I've got a 22.5. Let me give you that one and see what you think about it. I gave the doctor the 22.5, which has it's a little wider in this area. It doesn't look as sharp, like out to a point. And they said, I love it. And they bought it. That's what they wanted. And they were able to make their incision just the way they wanted it to be. But it didn't have as pointy of a tip. Now, when you get to the larger degree size, I personally have not seen those used. Honestly, I have not seen those used. I would be curious if I look to see what our sales are on those knives.
Well, this is very country related. There are countries where 30 degrees are more popular than the other
Okay,
one.
okay,
So there's some difference, at least here in Europe, from country to country. But the
yeah,
most popular is 15 degree everywhere,
right, yeah,
almost
okay,
everywhere, not everywhere.
okay, okay,
I will answer the next two questions.
okay.
Unique knives are manufactured by SharpPoint. Yes, Surgical Specialties acquired the company. Well, not by SharpPoint exactly. Surgical Specialties acquired Unique Technologies a couple of years ago, and then we are part of the same company, and we are all caliber ophthalmics. So they are manufactured in different locations, but yes. Are all the 3D knives made in the US? Yes, we make all the SharpPoint CC 3D knives in our US factory in Pennsylvania, not in Mexico. Another question, Mark, do you know more dental applications of our knives?
No, right now, if you look at the article, when we send this out, you can look at that article. It's a very good article. But we have a lot of these periodontists who are really happy with it. And essentially it's to make an incision in the gum for people who, and then they add, sometimes they'll add more tissue there for people that have shrinking, their gums are shrinking back. And I'm not sure what the other procedures are, but I know the doctors that purchase them are faithful in purchasing them and are very happy with them. And there's nothing else out there like it that I know of.
Yeah, I know that also in dental they use the 15 degree stab knives and the crescent and the mini crescent. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly the applications, the procedures, but those are the most popular knives in dental. I have another question here. What GPO agreements are you on in the US? VCN, HealthTrust, Premier.
We're on Premier and Vizient.
Okay.
We're trying to get HealthTrust.
And I think that's all. That's it.
Yeah, a lot of the GPOs have consolidated. You used to have MedAssets, Novation. They're now all part of Vizient.
Okay. Then we were planning to have the training for 1 hour. We are 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you everyone, because you are still listening to us. So it means that it has been interesting. I hope that you have got some information that is useful for you. And just to thank you again and remind you that we will have similar webinars every quarter. So keep an eye on our communications and you will be able to join us in our next webinar in the second quarter of the year, or maybe some of the doctors of your country that you can invite if we are having that webinar with KOLs. So that's it. Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a great weekend.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.